Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome to another review of Dragon Ball Super. On this edition, we're going to be talking about Dragon Ball Super Episode 5, and of course, what happened therein. So, without further ado, let's get started. So basically, the plot of this week's episode had to do with what everything was building up to this point in the series, and that is Goku versus Beerus on King Kai's planet. And just like everything preceding it up until this point in Dragon Ball Super, things in this episode happened just a little bit different than the movie. Essentially, in this adaptation of the events, Beerus arrived on King Kai's planet and asked Goku to come out. The exact same thing happened in which Beerus examined Goku and talked about him not being able to beat Frieza in his base form. Just as in the movie, Goku then asked Beerus if they could fight, and Beerus obliged him. This is where the main differences in this episode show up that are different from the actual movie, as things that happen are pretty different than the fight that we saw in that film. For starters, Goku started this fight off by starting as a Super Saiyan, as opposed to jumping straight to Super Saiyan 3. After Beerus dodged all of Goku's attacks, Goku then powered up to Super Saiyan 2. The same thing happened in this case as it did with Super Saiyan 1, and eventually Goku went Super Saiyan 3. Just as in the movie, Beerus was able to dominate Goku even as a Super Saiyan 3, however things were a little bit different. For one, they fought up in the air as opposed to on the surface of the planet. Beerus actually went out of his way to block and dodge a number of Goku's attacks rather than simply parrying it from the beginning. And of course the offense that Beerus actually demonstrated was much different as well, with Beerus actually flicking Goku through the air and then chopping him in mid-fly. And of course that concluded the fight with Goku landing on King Kai's planet in a crater. After this, Beerus went on his way to Earth, setting up the next episode in which Beerus meets Vegeta, and then setting up, of course, their classic encounter from the movie. So looking back at the fight, what do we have to say about it compared to its counterpart in the movie? Well, I for one would definitely have to say that I think the movie version was significantly better than the one we actually got to see in this episode. And of course, there's two big issues that I have to say about this fight that contribute to the reason why the movie version is better, and those reasons are number one, the length of the battle, and number two, the animation. Now I'll get into the second one a little bit later on. However, in this case, the length of the battle was a major detracting factor in this actual fight. And the reason I say that is the longer this fight actually ended up going on, the more impact was taken away from the initial fight between Goku and Beerus. Goku starting off this fight as a normal Super Saiyan not only added to his stupidity and arrogance, but also drew out the fight in a way that it really wasn't necessary to do. Was it really necessary to see Beerus continue to dodge over and over Goku's attacks as a Super Saiyan 1 or a Super Saiyan 2? And was it really necessary for Goku to go Super Saiyan 2 after he realized that Beerus was so vastly above him? Is he that stupid and arrogant that he really thinks that Super Saiyan 2 would make a difference either? And by the time it actually got to Super Saiyan 3, it made the rest of the fight up until that point essentially pointless. Another problem with this is the fact that Beerus was going out of his way to actually block Goku's attacks, whereas they should do nothing to him and there's no purpose of him to do that. Whereas in the original movie and at one point in this fight, Beerus actually does block Goku's attack, he uses it as an offensive move so that he can actually throw Goku and set up his next attack. In this actual fight, Beerus continues to dodge and block for no reason whatsoever other than to draw the runtime of the fight and the episode itself. We don't need Beerus dodging and blocking Goku's attacks for 5 minutes before he actually makes his move to actually demonstrate just how above Goku he really is. In the original fight, Beerus is able to show the massive distance between Goku and himself in terms of strength and speed, all within a fraction of the time it even took for Goku to get up to Super Saiyan 3. Any attacks that Beerus actually dodged within those 2 minutes were to show just how above Super Saiyan 3 he actually was. And his offense, while very minimal, was incredibly impactful, especially due to the fact that he was able to beat Goku in such a short period of time. In this fight, it just takes way too long to get to Super Saiyan 3, and when it does, it takes too long for Beerus to actually beat him. And though the fight still has impact to it, since Beerus is still able to defeat Super Saiyan 3 Goku with no problem whatsoever, the impact is diminished by the length that it takes for Beerus to finally do so. Also, there's another problem that's brought up in this episode that has to do with the powers of the characters, and more specifically making the characters less powerful than they actually are. Now, we all know about how Beerus says that Goku in his base form is weaker than Frieza, and that's understandable and can make sense within the course of the series. However, once Goku actually turns into a Super Saiyan, Beerus still implies that Goku would have had a very difficult time with that power defeating Frieza on Namek. And naturally, this makes no sense whatsoever considering just how much more powerful Goku has gotten since he fought Frieza on Namek, especially as a Super Saiyan. If Goku would still have so much problems fighting Frieza as a Super Saiyan at that point in the series, that would significantly diminish the powers of every other villain that Goku fought up until that point. Not only this, but the damage that Goku deals to King Kai's planet in his different forms is significantly lesser than what actually should have been done. The most glaring example of this would definitely have to be when Goku fired his Kamehameha at Beerus, and Beerus dodged and it went through King Kai's planet. Now, while this might actually seem like some sort of a significant feat, the problem is that Goku should have been able to do that easily even as a base form Saiyan. And considering that Semi-Perfect Cell, when he blew himself up, was able to destroy King Kai's planet, a Super Saiyan 3 who's vastly above him in terms of power should have effortlessly obliterated it. It almost seems like in this episode and recent Dragon Ball that they're almost trying to nerf and diminish the powers of the characters for the sake of the story. And while this is a common occurrence in fictional stories, the problem is that this always tends to go against everything that's happened prior in the series. And diminishing the powers of the characters with no real explanation whatsoever insults the intelligence of the fans and the viewers of that series. And in nearly every example, it's clearly a cheap cop-out to diminish the powers of these characters rather than write a clever in-universe way to take away these powers or to find characters that are far more powerful that fit within the course of the story. So clearly this is a current issue within Dragon Ball that needs to be resolved, or face alienating their entire fan base in the process. Overall, I definitely think that this episode was better than 3 and 4, if only because something actually moved forward the plot in this episode and actually happened. But I definitely think this is a clear step down from episodes 1 and 2, and if Toei doesn't get this series back on track, they're going to risk sinking the entire thing. Oh, and by the way, I did talk about some of that really bad animation earlier. Well, as promised, here it is. Well, my name is Mike, and this has been another edition of Dragon Ball Super Reviews. Tell me your own thoughts in the comments section, what you thought of this episode, and what you'd like to see happen in this series to come. Also, don't forget to check out my Ask FM, which will be in the description. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
And you better subscribe!